because you're not like the sort of Pokemon you think of as like a flex secondary Mega, but I think both it and Tyranitar can work either way, truly. So a really fun combination to come up with here.
Here we go. It's going to be the Rotom Wash and the Tyranitar, the Teeny, on the leads for Wolfe, going up against that classic duo of the Whimsicott and the Glimmora. Usually you're trying to set Tailwind with this and maybe try to snipe a big KO on like an Aerodactyl or Charizard or something. You don't have to do that. You can just go on the offensive now because these Pokemon are most likely going to outspeed both the Rotom and the Tyranitar.
Yeah, definitely get to dictate play here a little bit. Tyranitar, of course, does get a special defense boost during the Sandstorm, so that will help out a little bit. Certainly can't immediately switch in weather with a Mega Evolved weather Pokemon like this, but Tyranitar immediately get a Mega Evolve, so we're going to see Wolfe go a little bit different direction than we saw before the last time he was on stream.
Just going for the immediate stat boost on Tyranitar, making that into even more of a threat. Whimsicott will fire off the Moonblast. That's going to target down the Rotom. Not going after the Tyranitar, maybe expecting there to be potentially a Protect out of that Pokemon. Gets the special attack drop onto Rotom, a double up onto that Pokemon from both the Glimmora and Whimsicott. Doesn't actually KO it, and Tyranitar now gets to set up a Dragon Dance. This is critical because the dark typing of that Tyranitar means that this Whimsicott cannot encore that setup move. So sneaking that in, huge win for Wolfe.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I don't think we get a chance to mention it team preview, but yeah, Wolfe, always a player who's using a lot of setup moves, right? He really likes kind of just controlling the board with some of those sneakier tricks, and Whimsicott usually a pretty hard counter into that with the Encore, but the dark type Tyranitar going to deal with a little bit better than these other Pokemon. And Light Screen also big, where you mentioned kind of the strong special attackers. The team used to the Frostless in the back, and it's going to make things trickier as Tyranitar gets a second Dragon Dance. This Pokemon showing us his moves.
Yeah, the Tyranitar is already faster than the Whimsicott after one Dragon Dance. That Moonblast not dealing enough damage thanks to the special defense boost in the sand and the Light Screen. Rotom did its job and then bounced. Tyranitar is down to about half of its health after taking a Moonblast and an Earth Power, two super effective special attacks, and now this Tyranitar at +2 speed, +2 attack is going to start picking up KOs.
Yeah, it's going to be so quick now that it'll match the speed of a Tailwind if Whimsicott is to use it. I guess it depends kind of whether it's quicker these other Pokemon or not to start with. Though, as we saw the last time Wolfe was on stream, that is a jolly Tyranitar, so it's a little speedier than you sometimes see, enabling it to really take advantage of these Dragon Dances. And then Sneasler, a very interesting Pokemon in the field here, could do a number of things to help out. Could try to take the one shot at Whimsicott, could try to fake it out if it thinks it's going to go for a Tailwind or something, and avoid that happening entirely. Also threatening Dire Claw into that slot instead if you just want to pick up the knockout. So lots of strong options for Wolfe here. Sneasler gets it for free, and now a lot of offense being threatened from his side of the field.
Yeah, plenty of offense here, forcing the Protect out of the Whimsicott. So Evan has to protect that Pokemon. Really wants to save both of these Pokemon. Of course, the double Protect and the Fake Out really threatening here from Wolfe. But a double Protect and a Fake Out leaves an opportunity for a third Dragon Dance, at which point even Tailwind is not going to outspeed this Tyranitar.
Yeah, I mean, things are getting a little scary now where I don't...
I'm starting to worry.
The last time I saw 3 Dragon Dances in a double battle.
I think these Rock Slides even are going to start picking up KOs at this point.
Yeah, it could do a truly horrifying amount of damage. And yeah, a novice speed control on Evan's side of the field just doesn't really matter, where Tyranitar's going to be faster than basically everything. If Sneasler doesn't get Encore, it's able to start getting far. He's going to be quicker than most things too. It is that white herb set, so if he can get a close combat off, regardless of Tailwind, it may just be the 2 fastest Pokemon on the field are on Wolfe's side instead.
Yeah, absolutely. The Whimsicott threatening Tailwind is not actually threatening a whole lot of anything because of all of that. Sinistcha in the back. Classic Pokemon to support these setup mons on the Wolfe's side. Going to drink down the Matcha, recover 25% of its health, and now that's basically an entire Moonblast or an Earth Power from the Glimmora or Whimsicott. Okay, not quite enough to pick up the KO on its own, but don't worry, Tyranitar has some extra damage just hiding in the back.
Calculated.
The toxic debris now out on the field from Glimmora. Sneasler switching out, a big deal there to be able to remove the toxic spikes, basically just protecting the Sinistcha should it want to switch in and out, which it definitely does.
Yeah, and then it gets the knockout on the Whimsicott. Pretty crazy. I can't remember how many times I see the Whimsicott use Tailwind, and then wait, why is the other team moving first? Tyranitar just doesn't care. Yeah, this is horrifying. Now,
how many times do you see 3 Dragon Dances on the Tyranitar?
Yeah, I think that one. We're watching it right now. Hope everyone tuned in time for this first round of Swiss, because we're seeing something we haven't seen before. Okay, so but this is still an interesting spot, right?
Yeah.
Where Garchomp, a great Pokemon to have here. A little tricky to try to use the Earthquake because Glimmera's probably not going to appreciate that, and Tyranitar probably just survives, although it would be fairly close. So Wolf maybe going to want to try to reposition here a little bit. Sinistcha's Rage Powder going to protect it from Glimmera, but not so much from the Garchomp. And I guess Glimmera would need to get a lucky dodge and a Rock Slide or something to be allowed to move in here. Anyway, I think ideally for Wolf, you find some way to sacrifice the Rotom to get Sneasler back out, and then you have both the option of the Fake Out and trying to close combat in order to get the wider boost.
Well, Glimmera does not want to take an Earthquake or anything else, sticking around with its 1 hit point. Incineroar finally being shown by Evan, dropping the attack of that Tyranitar by 1. But that is still 2 stages of attack boosted on the Tyranitar. And that means that this knockoff just barely misses the KO. Incineroar getting huge value out of that Intimidate, protecting Garchomp. Takes an Earthquake for its troubles, but at least gets the Tyranitar off the field.
Yeah, it's a big knockout there. Critical hit on this own Incineroar, though, as it's I forget if we have enough other Sandshard for it to go down too, but pretty devastating damage, but it may still be okay for, I mean, the Sandshard is subsided, so yeah, it's sort of just barely gonna hang on, the light screen going to expire, and Wolf does get a lot of damage on that Tyranitar, but certainly expecting it to survive the turn there, failing to pick up the knockout because of that Incineroar, and things are right on the precipice of disaster there for Evan, but maybe that's enough that he can pull it back. Now, Sneasler gonna have to be the one offensive Pokemon, some really weakened Pokemon on Evan's side of the field, but
yeah, Evan has a total of 7 hit points across his 3 Pokemon right now.
Yeah, but conversely, the Rotom in the back are pretty weak as well. So, interesting position. That's the thing we see every day. And there is still presumably, I guess one more Pokemon to worry. But yeah, it's going to really have to use these resources carefully because at 1 HP and Glimmera, Tyranitar has probably done enough.
Yeah, I think if you get everything but the final 7 hit points on a team and you still have 3 Pokemon remaining on your side, probably feeling pretty okay about your chances there, especially if this fake out.
KO. Yeah, I don't
Put
see
on
that
your
every
bingo
day.
board, fake out KO.
I don't see that every day. And the Trick Room gonna go up from Sinistcha. It's like, you know what? Okay, well.
Oh, I can do this. I got this from here. Let me just set the Trick Room. 1 Machagacha, we're done. Let's go to game 2.
Yeah, so you're not even worrying about Sneasler finishing stuff off for it. Don't worry, I got this. Like my 65 Dragon Dances didn't work, but it's okay. Sinistcha can clean it up. Got a few more hit points in the 4 remaining for Glimmera and Garchomp. So, strange combination of events. Maybe like an interesting calc, just in case we somehow end up in a situation where Garchomp has to take another +2 knockoff. Yeah, what a strange game.
What a fascinating game here, as Glimmera is just going to try to stall out a little bit, buy Evan a little bit more time to think about this next game here, because, yeah, definitely can't do what he did this first game and allow that Tyranitar to set up. It actually never picked up any KOs on its own, but with the Sand getting the Whimsicott down to a range for Sand, getting the Glimmera down to Sash, and of course the Garchomp did the work on Incineroar, but it then got the Garchomp down to that final 3 hit points. Pretty good.
Yeah, and I think, even without the critical hit at Incineroar, right, just too much damage was taken here. Just make it a little bit easier where it allows Sinistcha to strangely be the win condition rather than Sneasler, but you gotta assume with these Pokemon so little health, Wolf had probably had this game solved anyway, so he's gonna switch around a little bit here, maybe try and get in a safer position, maybe just have a little bit of fun, but both sides thinking about the next game is Machagacha will land on both of these targets and send us to game 2.
Huge damage from the Machagacha, picks up the final 4 hit points on Evan's field, and that means that Wolf will take game 1. We are headed into game 2. Now, of course, Evan is 9-0, which means that he knows how to make some adaptations. Most likely, he did not win all of his games in 2, so going to have to make some adaptations here going into this team that Wolf has brought. But the real key to Wolf's success on some of these teams is just that your opponents have to improvise. And improvising in Pokemon is a really difficult skill to learn that really requires a lot of general experience with Pokemon and how these different archetypes work. And from that first game, Wolf came in with a very clear plan of, I'm going to set up Tyranitar, Whimsicott, Glimmera won't be able to do anything to me. That first turn was really big because Evan went for the double target onto the Rotom instead of just extra damage on Tyranitar. Wolfe showing he was willing to make a very aggressive play there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, where Evan, like the other players in the field, likely saw Wolfe's Swiss round on stream yesterday, where it's a very Steelix-focused game. So Wolfe showing, like, oh, I have some other game plans I could use here, and perhaps catching him a little bit off guard, where I think Tyranitar was the secondary option in the match yesterday, and like a little bit more of a distraction than the real threat, where here it just became an unstoppable monster. And yeah, even though Garchomp was just barely able to survive, having to get to that position was so painful that the game was no longer winnable for that point. So yeah, I think a little quicker offense probably going to be a key for Evan in this one, and I think some of the fun too is like, well, Wolfe has other options, right? It's not like Steelix is unpickable in any way in this matchup where, it's certainly going to take a lot of damage for like Glimmora if the two of them are to match up, but otherwise it's a pretty decent matchup for Steelix as well, so it's not you can just rule out that Wolfe is going to try that in one of these games. I think that makes this a very tricky team preview, so it's going to be critical for Evan to make the right decision so that Wolfe can't just run away with this game the way we did the first one.
Well, here we go. Game 2 of Swiss round 10. Sneasler and Rotom led by Wolfe. Glimmora and Whimsicott again by Evan. So Wolfe is not showing the Tyranitar immediately, most likely feeling I'm not going to be able to get away with sneaking in that first Dragon Dance a second time. Let me go a little bit more conservative, threaten Fake Out, threaten Light Screen, and then bring in the Tyranitar if he has that.
Yeah, and threaten some damage too, right? Where Whimsicott immediately going to go for the Tailwind, but there's also no Fake Out this time, so it could just be a Dire Claw to pick up a knockout there, or a close combat for a speed boost.
Well, Glimmora does outspeed the Sneasler after Tailwind, but the Earth Power not enough to pick up the KO. That will bring Sneasler down to very low, but the Dire Claw, that is a KO onto Whimsicott clean. And now a Rotom gets to move, set up the Light Screen if it wants to, or could just go on the offensive, break the Focus Sash of this Glimmora. Hydro Pump lands, brings Glimmora down to 1 hit point. Got Tailwind, but a huge trade for Wolfe.
That's a lot of damage that first turn. Close to getting clearing the board as you can get without doing it. And like the Tailwind could be big for Evan, but still, we get this low HP Glimmora, which kind of a number of ways that perhaps Wolfe could knock out here. And then, especially because I think a double target probably on the Rotom already not going to be enough. So Wolfe going to have some options on this turn already. And then no way to real Tailwind with Whimsicott already being knocked out. Sometimes it's exactly what you want on the Whimsicott side of the field. Like, okay, Whimsicott's going to go down early so I can go the offense. But I don't know if that's really the situation you're imagining here when that happens.
You usually don't want your Glimmora to also be at 1 hit point and not have picked up a KO on your opponents. But Garchomp is here to clean up Whimsicott's mess. That Rock Slide will be able to pick up the KO on to Sneasler. Sludge Bomb deals good damage to Rotom and gets the poison, which puts a clock on that Pokemon as well. Where there's a Rock Slide, there is a way. Rotom not able to go on the offensive here, and instead will just start taking that chip damage from poison.
Yeah, that's a tough turn for Wolfe, where I see some classic Rotom action there, where it gets both poisoned and flinched by the two potential RNG moves there. It's very unlucky. Going to get healed up a little bit by this, enough that if Evan wants to knock the Rotom out, he's going to have to commit another action from the Glimmora. The Garchomp likely not going to be enough, and Sinistcha rejoining the field, which is very interesting here. So we still don't know the final Pokemon. Likely one of the two Mega Evolving Pokemon for Wolfe. Certainly not going to be Talonflame, but either of them, probably would start out slow enough that a Trick Room here would be a real viable option, and we'll see who it is. It's Tyranitar once again.
It's Tyranitar. The Teeny is the final Pokemon for Wolfe this time around. There's the Rock Slide coming out from Garchomp, stealing a little bit of chip damage to the Tyranitar and the Sinistcha. Sludge Bomb connects onto the Tyranitar as well, deals a little bit of damage back. That special defense boost is huge, but even bigger is the second poison onto Tyranitar. Sinistcha will just go on the offensive with the Matcha Gotcha. Sinistcha's this game is just like, okay, all my friends are failing me. Let me try to sweep here.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just gotta do a little supportal combat. So picked up one knockout there, isn't able to get the burn itself, but will heal itself back up to full, at least prior to being buffeted by that Sandstorm. Tyranitar gonna take some damage to that poison. And hey, Glimmora, things looked a little bad for it when it first came out of the field, but wound up being very impactful, poisoning 2 Pokemon, almost knocking out another and putting in range for an easy Rock Slide KO. And this time Evan is really in the driver's seat, in part because of the help of these poisons, where Sinistcha can potentially try to switch in and out and help heal, but this is looking really bad. Corviknight has a great matchup against the remaining Pokemon. Rotom no longer really able to check it because it's so weakened. Tyranitar can have trouble dealing with it quickly, and Sinistcha matches up really poorly into it. So Tyranitar going to flee for now for that weakened Rotom.
Well, Rotom now out on the field for Wolfe. Will be immune to Earthquake coming out from the Garchomp. So Corviknight and Rotom both not taking any damage from this Earthquake. Sinistcha will take a little bit here, and this Corviknight probably needs to pick up the KO on this Sinistcha. Instead, just goes for a bulk up that allows the Sinistcha to either fire off a Matcha Gotcha or set Trick Room. Potentially, that Rotom might be able to underspeed the Corviknight in Trick Room, which means that getting a Thunderbolt off would be pretty big, but also pretty big getting a burn.
Yeah, it's a tough Pokemon to ignore, where this Sinistcha, it gets to roll a lot of dice hitting both Pokemon with a chance to burn every turn, as well as, again, healing itself back up. And nice switch by Wolfe as well, just to avoid that Earthquake, where you got to assume at some point he's going to need some damage. And Sinistcha's doing its best to keep swinging away here, but not going to be able to 1v3. So Rotom getting in safely, now going to at least threaten the Corviknight somewhat with a Thunderbolt, and Tailwind petering out as well. So Wolfe in a tough position, but doing as well as he can given the rolls against him to kind of get himself back in the game here. And Corviknight's actually below the attack it started at effectively, where even though it gained a bulk up, the burn going to more than negate that for now.
Yeah, and it definitely is difficult for the Sinistcha to 1v2 these two Pokemon. It will win a duel with Garchomp. It's the Corviknight that's the problem here. And at least the burn drop removes the leftovers recovery. But Wolfe is really going to need to find a way to swing at that Pokemon, especially with a Rotom, to get that super effective special damage into that Pokemon to really be able to break that.
Yeah, the good news for Wolfe is this Corviknight doesn't have Protect, and there's no more Pokemon remaining in the back. So if you can get a Thunderbolt off into that slot, there's no way to avoid it. But I'm going to try to avoid that with the Dragon Claw, and it does pick up the knockout of the Rotom. That poison damage really paying off.
Yeah, the poison ticks just bringing the Rotom down enough for a KO by that Garchomp. Dragonclaw picking that one up as another bulk up gets set by Corviknight. Matcha Gotcha will miss the Garchomp again, but really it is going to come down to this Corviknight, and the Sinistcha alone is not going to be able to break through that Pokemon. Needs someone to swing at that Pokemon, and now it can only be Tyranitar, but 2 bulk ups already. And with the poisons on the field, probably don't even have Timer as a win condition here.
Yeah, it's looking pretty over for Wolfe. Unfortunately, the poisons were just a huge impact in this game. And yeah, I mean, Sinistcha's got some cool supportive moves, but Brave Bird and Body Press going to be super effective on these two Pokemon from Corviknight. Rage Powder not going to be able to stop Garchomp from damaging Tyranitar with Earthquake now. And I just don't know how you realistically get through those moves. I think Wolfe's going to have to start thinking about game 3 here. I think it's a good adjustment by Evan to play a little bit more aggressively early in the game. But I think it was really cool rolling those dice, getting those poisons that kind of made this one unplayable for Wolfe.
Yeah, got the poisons that it needed, got the damage down. These Earthquakes coming out from Garchomp, not going to be able to pick up the KO on to Tyranitar because of the Protect. Sinistcha here will take a little bit of damage, is now threatened by the Corviknight. This Brave Bird, +2 attack, but also burn, bringing it back down to even. Sinistcha just barely hanging on there, but does have enough hit points. Corviknight dealing more damage to itself than Sinistcha has been able to deal to it all game long, but finally gets a Trick Room up. And now here is the potential option here. Tyranitar is likely to be the slowest thing on the field. Potentially, Corviknight might be able to outspeed it because of the jolly nature of the Tyranitar.
Yeah, I think.
But you could go for some Rock Slide flinches if you think you can get those.
Yeah, I mean, where there's a Rock Slide, there's a way. I mean, at the very least, I guess you'll learn the speed interaction, which both players might actually enjoy going into the final game. I would kind of assume Tyranitar is faster, just based on the way these Pokemon are probably trained.
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting to find out here, if nothing else. But regardless of that, I mean, Wolfe is also just running out of HP here, where I think normally where there's a Rock Slide, there's a way, but it may be tough to burn down the Corviknight fast enough, even with Rock Slide flinches because of the poison. Might need some critical hit flinches here for Rock Slide to pull through.
Yeah, well, Tyranitar will go ahead and Mega Evolve. Sinistcha protects here, so not going to take any damage. This will allow it to avoid any potential Brave Birds from Corviknight, but Corviknight is showing that it is underspeeding, aka outspeeding the Tyranitar in Trick Room. Tyranitar does pick up a KO onto Garchomp with that knockoff, but takes Rough Skin recoil and is going to take poison damage. And with the Trick Room set up, with Corviknight being able to underspeed the Tyranitar, Sinistcha just can't do it from here.
Yeah, I guess I assume just go for a Rage Powder and then hope you get the critical hit with the knockoff.
Yeah.
Is kind of all there is here, which I don't know if that would be enough or not, but that's what's left. So I guess we'll have to see what happens.
That is the remaining non-zero win condition for Wolfe Glick here. Corviknight goes for the Brave Bird. Wolfe does not get the double protect on Sinistcha, so that Pokemon will go down. It's all going to come down to if this Tyranitar can swing hard enough with the knockoff, get a critical hit through the bulk up boost, and take out this Pokemon. And just about does, but it is not enough damage.
Huh.
Well,
Well, what an ending. Both the Pokemon could be affected by their status. In fact, it just be not quite be enough damage.
So close.
And with 2 more turns of Trick Room, Corviknight's going to be able to finish this one way or another, where I don't think that's quite enough burn damage where both Pokemon would faint for their status effects at the end of the turn, but what a strange ending.
Yeah, that was not how I expected this to end. That is how I expected this to end, with Corviknight firing off a body press into the Mega Tyranitar, knocking that Pokemon out, but Evan Scott bringing it back from the brink there. It looked really bad at the start, but it really was just got that tailwind up, and then Glimmora being able to deal consistent damage and getting those poisons to really limit Wolfe's pivot options.
Yeah, Glimmora is very good into Wolfe's team, so I think don't get too distracted by the poisons.
Yeah.
That's very impactful in this game, but it is just in general a very powerful Pokemon into this team where doesn't have a whole lot of resist there, where the Tyranitar resists the Sludge Bomb, which still winds up being its undoing, and very few of the Pokemon on the team take Earth Power well, so Glimmora just very strong in this matchup. I think getting rid of it efficiently is a really critical part of this for Wolfe, and he doesn't have like a super great way to do that, right? You kind of want to take some time to ramp up, and that's the danger of allowing that to happen in some of these slower paced teams. Slower paced for a team that did 199% damage on the first turn. But after that, Glimmora just hung around for a while. Right? He had to keep swinging because Wolfe needed to kind of start executing his core game plan. And I just maybe you go for it sooner. Maybe just like, hey, what are the odds that it gets 2 first Sludge Bomb poisons again in game 3? Sort of a straight situation here, but it'll be very interesting to see what both players are doing. I think Evan, you kind of go for the same thing. It's like, hey, I probably didn't need to get quite that lucky, although Wolfe, as he does better than seemingly any player in the game, brought it very close at the end there, where it never seems to be any further apart than a 1-0 when Wolfe drops a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And heading into game 3, both of these players now have each won a game. Wolfe showing that he was going the Tyranitar mode both times. Evan bringing the same 4 Pokemon again as well. Actually, did not bring the Incineroar this time around, so was able to make a little bit of an adjustment there, get a little bit more offensive pressure instead of the defensive work here. And going back to game 2 here, Wolfe will lead the Sneasler and the Rotom Wash. And here it is again, the Garchomp and the Glimmora coming out from Evan.
Yeah, so a similar approach to the previous game. We'll have to see if the trainers opt to handle it differently or not. Your Garchomp certainly threatening a lot of damage into the Sneasler this time, where previously we'd seen the Whimsicott on turn 1 both times. But again, it's a little difficult to actually do. The only ground type attack of this Garchomp knows is Earthquake, which Glimmora is definitely not going to appreciate. I think with how pivotal it's been, you certainly cannot hit your own Glimmora for it. So either you don't go for the Earthquake, or you have to Spiky Shield with Glimmora, which opens up some options for Wolfe to perhaps try to double target, maybe go for a Fake Out and a Will-O-Wisp into that slot to reduce the damage from that Earthquake.
Yeah, definitely. Only having Earthquake on that Garchomp is going to make life miserable for the Glimmora. Would love to be able to pick up the KO onto Sneasler, but no real options right now.
We do see the Spiky Shield, so maybe it'll be the Earthquake. We'll have to see if Wolfe calls this or not.
That's a Protect coming out from the Glimmora. Sneasler going on the offensive, connects with Garchomp with the Dire Claw. Did not go for a Fake Out, but instead just going for damage and the potential for a status effect. There's the Earthquake coming out from Garchomp. Does not deal damage to either the Rotom or the Glimmora thanks to the Spiky Shield. But here it connects onto Sneasler, picks up that KO. Now, what does this Rotom do? Is it going to try to go for a Light Screen? Is it going to try to go for a Will-O-Wisp? Or is it going to try to go for damage? Will-O-Wisp is the choice, and it does connect onto Garchomp. That threat is now effectively neutered.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal, but that's not very good value for the Sneasler there, right? Like, even if you click close combat, at least it's better damage. Barely doing any chip, going down early, putting Wolfe to an immediate disadvantage. And at least you get Tyranitar in quickly, who's not being as threatened by the Garchomp now of it. It's burned, and again, you're still in the same situation where it's tough for it to use Earthquake here. But now Glimmora is still threatening some damage to that slot, where unless you like Hydro Pump Rock Slide, you can forego the attempt to Dragon Dance in order to pick up a knockout here. It's still a very precarious position, but we'll see what Wolfe's thinking.
Wolfe will immediately Mega Evolve the Tyranitar, as opposed to previous games where he had held off on that. But just like in game 1, no protects. Instead, Evan is doubling up onto the Rotom with the Dragon Claw, with the Sludge Bomb, and just as before, Rotom barely hangs on, but takes a poison for its troubles. That, however, does mean that Tyranitar, in a replay of game 1, has been able to start setting up these Dragon Dances, and we saw just how effective that Pokemon was as soon as it got 3 Dragon Dances, but also probably sooner, too.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if there's no Incineroar in the back, maybe it only needs 2 Dragon Dances this time. Also, that chip on Garchomp matters, too, where we saw how much damage the knockoff did, a +2 attack last time. Would certainly be able to knock it out if it gets to a second Dragon Dance this time. But even without it, I think a knockoff would be pretty close now, where maybe, Burn would finish it off in a couple of turns. However, you really don't want to ignore that Glimmora. Wolfe giving up a lot to get that Light Scream up once again, but Tyranitar going to go for that second Dragon Dance. So likely Sinistcha in the back, and Wolfe just committing to the win condition that Tyranitar is going to defeat all these Pokemon on its own.
Well, there's the Dragon Claw coming out onto Rotom. Rotom now will go down finally, but did a lot of work for Wolfe. Here comes the Earth Power coming out from the Glimmora. Once again, deals a decent amount of damage, but thanks to all of the buffs on that Tyranitar, it's going to be a 4-hit KO, I believe. But that just means that this Tyranitar is going to get to deal so much damage and heal right back up as the Sinistcha switches in.
And Tyranitar successfully avoiding a special defense trap there, too. I think the first time the Glimmora has failed to get a secondary opportunities. But so Sinistcha going to heal up Tyranitar. Critically, though, these are the last 2 remaining Pokemon. So it's the only hospitality boost that Sinistcha is going to be able to give its pal Tyranitar in this one. But hey, full health. It's got 2 Dragon Dances up. So we know from the previous game a knockoff would pick up the Garchomp, assuming Incineroar isn't in the back and be able to intimidate it. I think a Rock Slide is probably more likely here, maybe hoping for some glitches though. But no, why just Dragon Dance a 3rd time once again? Perhaps I'll like Sinistcha to break the Focus Sash here with a Matcha Gacha.
Yeah, Garchomp's Rock Slide connects onto both the Tyranitar and the Sinistcha for pitiful damage. But when you're clicking Rock Slide at this point, you're not really caring about the damage. You're hoping for a flinch. Sinistcha does not flinch, though, and Tyranitar was too fast. Matcha Gacha will go off onto the Garchomp and Glimmora. So all of that damage that Sinistcha just took, most of it getting healed right back up thanks to the Matcha Gacha. Garchomp will go ahead and munch down on its Citrus Berry, heal up just a little bit, but with that burn, Garchomp is not doing a lot, and Wolfe is feeling pretty safe to just go for these Dragon Dances. Yeah,
very healthy Tyranitar, and I mean, at some point, let's probably start attacking here, where you don't want Sinistcha getting burned down too much because, it can't help out against some of the Pokemon in the back, but we've turned tables a little bit, where now it's the Tyranitar who's very quick and potentially threatening some Rock Slide flinches.
So Glimmora going to go ahead and protect itself once again with the spiky shield, indicating that Garchomp is trying to go for an Earthquake. That is a big Rock Slide to a resisted Garchomp. Not enough to pick up the KO, but does get good damage down to allow that Sinistcha to potentially pick it up with the Matcha Gacha. Earthquake will go off, deals a little bit of damage to the Sinistcha and a decent amount to the Tyranitar as well, bringing it back down to where it started as after it switched in on that Earth Power. The Matcha Gacha on to the Glimmora will fail into the Protect and connect onto the Garchomp. Should be able to pick up the KO on the Garchomp. 1 hit point, but the Burns got this. Don't worry.
Yeah, Rotom getting its revenge from the grave there, and I really see the support of Rotom here as well. The Tyranitar's been hit by a couple of attacks, but it barely looks like it. Where the reduced damage from both is really going to make a big difference because Tyranitar is just so integral to this win condition, right? Where Sinistcha's really doing a nice job of chipping away, but Tyranitar's damage is critically important here. And now with the Corviknight on the battle, you see the importance of keeping Sinistcha relatively healthy. Do not want to take any body presses into that Tyranitar with a 4x weakness, where even with all Tyranitar's very impressive stats and the help of a supportive Pokemon, a Body Press probably going to pick it up here. So you've got some options. You can try to Rage Power, maybe go for a Rock Slide, which should pick up Glimmora, potentially do some really devastating damage to Corviknight, despite it's normally being a very bulky Pokemon. No Pokemon is so bulky, but they want to be hit after 3 Dragon Dances.
Well, there's a Rage Powder coming out from the Sinistcha to protect the Tyranitar from a Body Press. Tyranitar is faster and no bulk ups. Corviknight, no bulk ups this time. That's a 1-hit KO. Tyranitar, I got the boost. You don't got the boost. Glimmora's Earth Power will connect into the Sinistcha because of the Rage Powder, and now the Tyranitar is in complete control of this match.
Yeah, it was a kind of critical mistake there, right? Where not only doing very little damage with Resisted, the Light Screen, but also no chance for that Sludge Bomb poisoning. We've kind of been joking about it, but I think it does make a big difference. And now the last Pokemon this time is Froslass. I think that's very bad for Evan here. Likely looking at a turn here where if Tyranitar is able to hit a double Rock Slide, this game is just over.
Yeah, at this point, Evan has to be praying for Tyranitar to miss those Rock Slides. At the same time, Tyranitar doesn't really have to go for Rock Slides. Knockoff will pick up the KO onto that Froslass. Knockoff will pick up the KO onto the Glimmora, and with Sinistcha still up, Tyranitar can still be protected from any single target attack.
Exactly, yeah. I think the only reason you really feel like you have to Rock Slides here if you're worried about hitting Knockoff into a Protect while the other Pokemon attacks, because otherwise, I think if we don't see a double Protect here, Knockoff just instantly wins the game.
Well, Froslass will go ahead and Mega Evolve into the Mega Froslass. Sets the Snow. Tyranitar actually going for for the protect here. Wolfe trying to scout out those single target protects. Actually, a double protect coming out from the
Really
Seneca
smart.
and the Tyranitar.
Yeah, I love this move by Wolfe. I know it looks like it's a nothing bird here. It's like, oh, like why double protect? Great job, Wolfe. But no, he's just trying to get a protect. If either of these Pokemon protected, I think he would have gone for a Rage Powder into next turn and a knockoff in that slot. On the other hand, very great by Evan not to use protect here. I think it's like the game is almost over where you have to double protect the next turn if you do protect here. Now he has the option if he wants to. Like, okay, well, because I double attacked on this turn, I can try and catch a knockoff in one of these slots, assuming that he's predicting that Wolfe will go for that knockoff versus going for a Rock Slide here perhaps because he didn't get the protect.
Well, there's the Rage Powder from Sinistcha to protect Tyranitar this turn. No protects coming out from either of Evan's Pokemon, and that just means Knockoff is happy to take this one-hit KO onto Frostlass. Glimmora not going to be able to break through this Sinistcha, and that means that Tyranitar is just going to get another KO next turn. That's going to mean that Wolfe Glick is going to be 10-0 heading into our next round of Swiss. There's the forfeit from Evan Scott.